Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Sportscaster and her son, where sports bridges the gap between the generations. I'm obviously the older generation, Peggy, the mom, 12-time Emmy Award-winning sportscaster from ESPN Radio in Chicago. I am the co-host of the Chicago Bears post-game show on the Chicago Bears Radio Network, as well as Peggy and Dion on Saturday mornings on ESPN 1000 in Chicago. And this is the younger generation, my son, Jason.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I'm Jason. I'm a sportscaster out here in Topeka, Manhattan, Kansas. I spend pretty equal time in both these days. I'm not going to bury the lead here, Mom. The Bears have a new head coach. It's Ben Johnson. They got the big fish candidate. Everyone
Shocking.
in Chicago cannot stop talking about this, even a week later. Your thoughts?
Well, everyone wants to know, how did it happen? How did they get the number one guy on the market across the country? There are shows that are saying, what? He picked Chicago? So this is something that, we're the third largest market in the country. And yet everyone still looks at Chicago like the mom and pop shop, like the small town team. And the Bears are trying to turn things around, not only on the field, but also in the front office with the way they have hired, with who they have brought in, the structure, and the money that they are spending as well, Jason. So we're going to take a little sneak behind the curtain to see exactly how these negotiations got done. Jason, let's bring in Rick Smith from Priority Sports. He is the agent to new Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson. Rick, I've known you for a long time, but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did you call me a dinosaur in our text messages?
I said we both are dinosaurs. Not just you, Peggy, both of us.
No, I know. We've both been in town for a long time, which I have to tell you, to go from representing athletes to coaches, what has that been like for you?
It was time. What I realized was I try to be self-aware the best I can, that every single year I would get a year older and the players would never change age. And I think my exit from player representation was that it was just, I was too, the age gap was too much. It was too much about branding and followers and social media based representation. I was still about, first guy in, last guy out, strength, conditioning, nutrition, off-season work, things I thought that actually made sense for how to develop your career. And they weren't all that interested in that. And so while I'm versed in social media and use it every day, I just didn't feel like that made a great football player. So I bailed.
So who was your first football player that you repped, and who's the first coach that you have repped?
The first football player I repped was a fullback from Penn State who played for the Steelers by the name of John Whitman, long time ago. And
I was going to say, are we talking Suey?
I do know Matt. Matt's a friend, but no.
Yeah.
That was in law school then. But it was. I think when I started as an agent, it was '95, and then my first coach. I switched over to coaches like 5-6 years ago, maybe 7. I think the first coach that signed with me was Dan Quinn.
Really? Yeah. So you had Dan when Dan was interviewing with the Bears. What was the difference from that time around and this time around with interviewing Ben Johnson with the Bears?
Well, I think last time around, they used a lot of outside consultants, people outside the building. People didn't work inside the building. And I think those people, they've got their own agendas, they've got their own relationships, and I think that then becomes too relationship driven as opposed to picking or finding the best guy. And I think this year when they moved it all in-house and just had in-house people working on it so that they knew kind of, I think, what they needed, it strengthened the process precipitously.
Going off that interview process question, Ben only interviewed with the Bears once. He said in his introductory press conference that this is where he always wanted to be. How true is that? How much of a target destination was Chicago?
Well, I think it was always in his heart, but I never let him get there. Because, when you have choice, there's very few coaches, honestly, that have choices in a cycle. There's one or two max in every cycle that has really potentially could have multiple offers from multiple teams. And I knew going in that Ben would be one of those two. So I forced him to keep his head blank as best as possible. And I didn't have a lot of time to talk to him. The season's going on. I would talk to him 15 minutes every Friday when he put his game plan to bed, as he always said. And then I was only able to make my final presentation to him with all the information I learned on the Sunday after the Lions were eliminated by the Commanders. And I think when he woke up Monday morning and told me to try to get a deal done with the Bears, I think the Bears were always in his heart, but I never let them communicate that to me, and I didn't want to know that because I wanted him to be able to understand the risks and rewards potentially of every team that he would have a choice to work at.
When you say that he wanted to get a deal done with the Bears, when you go to the Bears and say, okay, Ben's interested, let's get this done, was there any element of surprise on the Bears end? Like, oh, he's actually interested? Or was it, okay, we got our guy?
It's, let's go reverse. Jason, how old are you, by the way?
I'm 22.
Okay.
Jason's a sportscaster in Kansas and by K-State, Manhattan.
All right, beautiful. So as Peggy and I know, let's reverse it. When you apply for a job, you're sitting there on pins and needles waiting to see what that answer is going to be, especially a job you really want. And now reverse it, because the Bears are the ones waiting on pins and needles to see if their first choice wants to come. And I think when I called and said, let's try to get a deal done, I think it was just, it's like immediately the stress and nervousness goes away and you go into kind of action mode. And they were like, yeah, that's awesome. Let's go to work and actually try to make this come to fruition.
So what were the fallacies? What was misrepresented in these negotiations that we were hearing, these leaks from various, media sources? Tom Brady was really, really in love with Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson wanted to bring his own general manager with him. What were the fallacies? What was true and what was not true?
That none of that was true. I mean, yes, Tom and Ben, during their interview with the Raiders, yeah, they were intrigued, and they were really intrigued by Ben a lot. It never got to a point to determine whether or not they would actually make an offer or not. They never did make an offer because we didn't allow that to happen. My style is I'm going to team one first, and I'm giving you a window of time to get this done. And if you blink on me, then I may go to team two. I never got to team two because I didn't know. We got it done with team one, so I don't even know what team two was in Ben's mind because we never had to get there. But Tom was definitely interested, but no, they never made an offer. Mark Davis said that the other day, and he's correct. As far as Ben wanting to bring his own general, no. He just needed a comfort level that he could work with the general manager that was in place, if that was the hand that was dealt to us, or if there was an open GM spot that there would be discussions about allowing him to be a part of the process to pick a next guy. But it wasn't, no, you have to, it's me and somebody else. I think that's a hard pill for a team to swallow. And I don't really think it's necessary. As long as you feel a connection, a comfort level with the general manager you're going to be working with, then you're good to go.
Rick, living in the Chicagoland area like you do, you have more of an intimate knowledge of what's going on at Halas Hall. You've represented other players that have been in and out of the doors of Halas Hall. So you're familiar working with the ownership, the past team president, past general managers. Did you have to fight your own bias either about maybe their deficiencies in the past, and not, you said you told Ben, don't go with your heart. You didn't want him to get to the heart part, but did you also have to fight maybe some of your own biases in knowing what has gone on at Hallis Hall in the past?
I think initially, yes. But I also went in with a completely open mind. And, I had the only thing I really put in the media ever was in the beginning when I said Ben was looking for alignment and an organization that could recognize maybe past failures and have a plan in which to plug those holes. So I went in with a clear mind and allowing sort of this new structure with Kevin and Ryan in place to be able to explain to me what alignment, what kind of alignment we would have, and what's the plan to plug the holes. And I was extremely comfortable after multiple discussions that they had a really good structure in place, really good plan in place, and it'll be a very comfortable place for Ben to be, and he could succeed.
Let me follow up real quick, Jason. I want to follow up real quick about Ryan Poles. Was it important to you, and did you guys request to know what his contract status is and if he would be around for the length of Ben's contract?
That's way out of my lane. But no, that wasn't a personal checklist item for us. That's between Ryan and the organization, and if we're hoping everything works great and they can tie themselves at the hip and sort of let's go.
The opportunity to coach Caleb Williams is a huge aspect of this. What role did having the quarterback of the future set in stone play in Ben's decision here?
I mean, for any coach looking for a job, Ben said it himself at the press conference. If you remember, he said that in today's analytics, quarterback efficiency is a much stronger analytic than turnover ratio in a game. And he came from a place that took a quarterback that had just been discarded by a team in Jared Goff and turned him into pretty much a Pro Bowl player. So having Caleb with the skill set he's got, sure, that factored into Ben's decision, and Ben's really looking forward to working with him.
The Bears interviewed like 500 candidates. At what point did they make it clear that Ben was their number one guy?
Oh, pretty much after their interviews were over.
After that first round of Zoom?
Yeah, after they finished their Zoom calls, I had a pretty good feel that they were all in.
What changed with the way they negotiated? Was there a difference in how much they were willing to spend this time around than in years past when you've talked with them?
I've never had a coach there, so I don't know the answer to that question. Obviously players are a much different animal, but for this coach's search, there's a market. And I had an idea in my head when I picked up the phone to call to try to get something done of what the range would be in, and they, both in years and we call it average per year, and a couple hours we were done. I mean, but I also gave them a pretty short window, so I wasn't really interested in, here's $1 million a year, I want $100 million a year.
Back and forth, yeah.
It was sort of like, here's the range, where are we going, boys? You comfortable? Yeah. And they didn't blink.
What role did Kevin Warren play in these negotiations? Can you see the difference and feel the difference with him there at Hallis Hall?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, big time. Kevin's great. I mean, I've known Kevin. I first met Kevin in Chicago 30 years ago. I had worked for a guy, and then I left, and he then started working for this same guy. It was actually Mike Slive, the former commissioner of the SEC, and Mike's now passed away, but that's when I first met Kevin 30 years ago, and we didn't keep in touch often, but enough to, I had talked to him when he was with the Rams, I had talked to him when he was with the Vikings about an issue. Then he went to the Big Ten, then he went to the Bears, and he's been around so many different places. He's had exposure to other buildings. He's had exposure to how the league is working and the right structures that work. He's really brought an energy, a different way to think about things to the building. And George has been wonderful. He's been great. He's absolutely like, let's go, I'm all in. And they're not stuck in their ways in any way, shape, or form. And I think everybody in the town has this perception that, it's mom and pop and they're all stuck in their ways. And going back to, Coach Hallis, when I was a little kid standing on the sidelines, and that's not what the Bears look like today. By the way, I don't know if you guys, Peggy, I'm sure you've been there, but man, their facility is like, it could be the best in the league. It's unbelievable. It
is. It's pretty amazing. Go ahead, Jace.
Mom, I mean, really, the only question that I had left was, I kind of felt like throughout the season there were a lot of things kind of leaking out and rumors, like my mom said, from those, kind of burner accounts on Twitter and stuff. But based on what you told us, you said you only talked to Ben 15 minutes Friday. Was there any, discussions going on during the season about his next step, or was,
No.
He just seemed to be locked in on the season, correct?
100%, not a bit. I'm not. Listen, I also represent Dan Campbell, so I have a tremendous respect for. So does Ben, and Ben isn't like that. Ben he's all in, man. He's all into what he's doing, and he had a job to do with the Detroit Lions, and we both made that decision up front that when the season was over, or when the necessary time, like that bye week they had, we'll talk to that about the details of what I was finding out. My job is to vet, to collect the information, to vet again. And I just kept going and going and going and going. And it's just compiling just crazy amounts of knowledge. And then I finally was able to present it to Ben and his wife on Sunday evening in a very long call, going through each team and risk and reward. And I said, okay, buddy, gut check time. Go to bed. Think about it all night. Call me in the morning because the balls are in the air and we're not going to let them come crashing down. So I had this little window, and Ben was great and got it done.
Rick, something changed with Ben between last year and this year. How much influence did you and Priority have when you work with an assistant coach who says, I'm not ready? Last year, he turned jobs down because he didn't think he was ready. So what kind of homework did you give him? Is it, I grew up in the industry and in the business where every athletic director, every general manager would say that they had their notebook in the front desk of the front drawer of their desk with the list of names and who they wanted and who their staff would be. So what did he work on particularly in the off season that made him more ready?
It was just, I know this is going to sound super cliche, but it's his head, headspace is so important in sports, where your head is, and I didn't work with Ben last 2 cycles, but as he explained to me, his headspace was in a much different place this cycle than it had been in the previous 2 cycles. And he wasn't going to just take a job to take a job. He was going to find the right situation, the right place, and literally going back to Detroit was on the table. We never took that off the table. Like if we didn't find a spot that he felt comfortable in, no matter where his headspace was, he would have walked right back into an incredible job, not a good job, a great job with great players and really good money and a lot. So he's, it all came together for him, and he and his wife basically said, we're ready. Feel good about the Bears. Let's see if we can get something done.
Just a couple more quick ones for you. How much say will he have, and did he ask for in personnel decisions and anything like that?
Peggy, that's so overrated.
Really?
Yeah, it's that's old school, really old school thinking. The old Bill Parcells, Ron Wolf days. They had all the power. The coach was stay in your office. We'll tell you who to coach. Those days are over. There really isn't a building in the league where there's not collaboration. GMs and coaches really do a good, decent job of checking their egos at the door. And these guys most buildings do, it's just some people are better than other people, at their jobs. So you'll see some guys really succeed at that and some don't. But that's over, and that's not a thing.
He's not at Mobile at the Senior Bowl. Is that overrated as well?
You can watch film. They film everything. You don't.
Yeah.
I mean, he's Ryan and his group went down today. Ben stayed back because he's still trying to fill a staff. And that's the most important thing right now is get his staff in place, because then you can start then you can start putting your playbooks together and start putting your philosophies together. But right now you got to get your staff in place. That's the most important thing.
Last two questions. You grew up here. You intimately know what it's like being a Bears fan. You've seen the last set of coaches. Why is Ben different?
In my opinion, I think he's got a really strong, clear vision of what an entire football team looks like, the skill set needed, the intangibles needed, height, weight, and speed needed, whatever goes into those decisions. I think he's going to be able to clearly communicate to Ryan and his staff on, this is what we need. Go find it. And I think that it seems to me, and I don't know, this is my own opinion, and I've never asked the question, it seems to me that's what's kind of been lacking in the past, that there hasn't really been a clear vision. And I think Ben, he is smart, he is organized, he thinks on his feet. You guys saw it at his press conference. He's unbelievable. And I think his clear vision will allow the front office to go find those players.
You know that I can't say goodbye to you without asking you for something interesting and different that we don't know about Ben, that was not asked of him. He's a math genius. I know he designed a computer program with offensive plays for the teams he's been with in the past. Does he have hobbies? What do we not know about him that makes him interesting? Like, I need that one little thing.
It's so boring, Peggy. He's got a great wife. He's got 3 little kids, 8, 5, and 1.5. Every minute he doesn't spend at the office, which is so little, unfortunately. He's a workaholic. He's got a huge work ethic. Is spent with those kids, and that's why I get my 15 minutes a week by design, because when he's not working, he absolutely will be with those kids. So maybe someday when the kids grow up and they go out of the house like Jason does, he'll be able to focus a little more on whatever hobbies he has. But right now it's work and kids.
Well, that's good then, because I guessed right in listening to his press conference, and I sent him a little care package, and it's a Chicago coloring book for the kids and a couple of kids' things to do in Chicago, because I could tell that that's probably the one part of him that he wishes he had more time with them. So he's getting a little care package from us.
Good. Every coach does, and him especially. He's 38. Okay. I mean, he's 38 years old. I mean, at 38, believe me, I didn't have the responsibility he did. So
he's a baby around us dinosaurs. Rick,
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Great job bringing Ben Johnson to Chicago. Everyone's excited.
And by the way, just one more thing before I leave. So for all the listeners out there, my 15 minutes is absolutely up right now. I'm done. I did this for Peggy because I love Peggy and she's been great through the years, but I am done. So good luck. I hope you win a lot of games.
It's not often you see an agent talking on camera, so we appreciate it, Rick, and we hope you don't get in any trouble.
I believe me, the Bears should be paying me. I'm the greatest PR thing they've ever had. So
exactly.
It's all good.
Great job. Go celebrate. Thank you, Rick.
Appreciate you all.
All right. That's Rick Smith joining us. I mean, Jason, seriously, just a great agent over the years. Like he said, the grind as a player's agent, and having to be the first one in as an agent, so that they're like, oh, this is the first guy that was interested in me, and they sign with you. It's like throwing darts at the wall sometimes, and it's a grind. And so now to have this fairly new concept of coaches being represented by agents, it's only been around for like 12 years. And, all the big name coaches, the guys who are already head coaches, they all had agents. But the assistant coaches who want to be a head coach, this is all still fairly new. So it's it's interesting to hear his perspective for sure.
His perspective was epic. I mean, he knows everything that happened. And so to hear everything, how it went down, the fallacies that you asked about, what was true, what wasn't, any question that we had over the past couple of weeks or months regarding Ben Johnson and the Bears and the level of interest was answered that last 15 minutes, his last 15 minutes with any media outlet. So
Yeah.
shout out to you, Mom, for being a big relationships person and helping make that possible. Rick Smith, what an awesome interview.
It is interesting, though, to see how fast it actually came together.
Yeah.
This was, and everyone's saying,
Overnight.
was this Ben
Overnight.
Johnson's choice all along? Not really. That it literally was one meeting with his agent, one presentation from his agent after one Zoom meeting with the Bears. Pretty incredible.
It's incredible, and it feels like a match made in heaven, and it's just great to know that both sides felt that way throughout really the entire process. So I'm excited, you're excited, and great time to be a Bears fan. Rejoice.
You want to do some predictions?
Mom, I'm always down to do predictions. First off, and I don't know if I've already said this on, forgive me if I have, but I have to say it because it looks better by the week, and I've predicted this on Twitter back in November, and I'm just going to say it now. Iowa State men's basketball, they're going to win the national championship this year. They're the best high major basketball team right now. I think Auburn's beatable. I think Duke's beatable. I saw Duke almost lose to NC State the other night with the player throwing up all over the court. College basketball is awesome. Like, if you're not watching this sport every night like I am, you're missing out. So men's college hoops, I've got Iowa State. And on the women's side, I'm really liking South Carolina right now. I know everyone's giving UCLA the love at number 1, but they have the number 49 ranked strength of schedule in the country. South Carolina's got the number 1 ranked strength of schedule in the country, and they've beat the number 2 through 6 teams in the country across the last 2 months. I mean, Dawn Staley's group does a great job every year. So
Dawn Staley is not afraid to go and play the tough teams. I love it. I think it's great. I think it's, she is in Pat Summit territory right now with what she's doing in South Carolina. That's great. All right.
Absolutely. And she is such a great trailblazer for women's basketball, Black women, minorities as a whole. I mean, Dawn Staley's she's a girl boss, as my generation describes it.
Totally. All right. What else you got?
All right, so my second prediction, we got the Super Bowl coming up. I'm not sure if we're going to do an episode before then, so I may as well just get my Super Bowl prediction out there. I've got the Chiefs winning, no surprise there. 3-peat, you can't really pick against them right now. But my main prediction, I think that Travis Kelce is going to propose to Taylor Swift after they win on the field and then retire during his post-game press conference. That's my Super Bowl prediction.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a heck of a prediction.
And you'd see that like on commercials and ads, like that would be like that would be like this generation's like Jordan picture with like the spread legs doing the dunk. Like you'd see it everywhere forever.
Oh my gosh, that's a great one. Is that 3 or are you counting?
That's 2. Number 3, and I need to get this out here before. Because I don't know, the White Sox don't deserve to have an episode from us yet. They're terrible. They've lost 100 games back-to-back years. But I learned this week that no team in Major League Baseball history has lost 100 games 3 years in a row. And that makes me think that there's no way the White Sox do it this year. Between a new manager, a young pitching staff, the team that they finish the 2025 season with will mirror the White Sox teams of the future for the most part. I don't see a way where they don't absolutely smash that win total of 49.5. I think it's offensive, even though they only won 39 games. I didn't watch as much as I usually do. Who could blame me? So I can't really remember how many games they won last year, but they are going to win so many more this year. I've got them anywhere between 63 and 68 wins this season. And that pitching staff, Mom, I'm really excited about it. They have the top 2 left-handed pitching prospects in baseball, Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, and both of those 2 should debut in Chicago before the end of the season.
All right, nice. Well, at this point, let's just wrap things up and say our thanks to Rick Smith from Priority Sports, the agent to new Chicago Bears head coach Ben Johnson. Priority Sports also representing, and does Rick Smith, Dan Campbell, the head coach of the Detroit Lions, Steve Kerr from the Golden State Warriors, Aaron Glenn, one of the agencies that not only represents athletes and broadcasters, but they also represent assistant coaches and head coaches as well. So thank you to Rick Smith, who gave his 15 minutes of fame and the final 15 minutes to us here on the Sportscaster and Her Son podcast. Also, thanks to our producer, Jack McGrath at ESPN Chicago, where the audio version of this podcast can be heard each and every week. And you can actually also find some of our past episodes as well. And Jason, if you like this episode,
I'm just going to ignore the fact that you got my name wrong.
Jakin? I'm going to start calling you Jakin.
If you like this episode, you can like, subscribe, share, send this to your friends. I mean, anything that you do to boost our algorithm, it helps us. It helps make more episodes like these and great interviews like the one that my mom landed for this show possible. And so, by the way, check out that blue ticker down there. I like that new color. Is that what's the deal with the change up?
I just kind of was doing something different. That's all.
There you go.
Yeah. Go from the red to the blue. Yeah. So like Jason said, please, you can follow us on Twitter, on X, at TSAHS. That's the Sportscaster and Her Son pod, or at Jason Conander, or at ESPN Peggy. We also have a website, the sportscasterandherson.com. We have a Facebook page. We're on X. We're on Instagram. Come along for the ride. It's a lot of fun, everybody. Well, this was fun. A little sneak behind the curtain of what goes on in negotiations in the National Football League for a head coach. So lots of fun, Jason. That's it for this episode. Have a good one. Stay warm in Manhattan, Kansas.
It's beautiful out today. I actually went and got my mail and shorts and t-shirts this morning. So life's good out here, Mom. I hope things continue to go well. I'll catch you soon.
See how positive we're all feeling now after the Bears hire Ben Johnson. Thank you for joining us, everybody. So long.